One or sooner shore error 30,000. My world has the sound of chaos, the sound of a computer screen with dozens of open windows, the sound of pencils and pens falling off my desk, the sound of my kettle boiling as I get lost in a drawing. I'm Yumi, a 28-year-old graphic designer, and my dream is to be a successful comic book artist. I create colorful worlds, full of emotion and life, but my real life, my life here, is a mess. 240,000. Troy 110,000. The sound of my apartment with piles of books, papers, and coffee cups is the soundtrack of my existence. It's the sound of my failure. I graduated with honors, but the only thing I got was a job at a small design shop, which ended up closing its doors. The sound of my sadness, the sound of my despair, overwhelmed me. I needed a job. I needed money to pay the rent, to buy the materials I needed for my project. 301 20,000. 001 50,000. I was about to give up on my dream when I saw the ad. A large gaming company is looking for a talented graphic designer. The sound of my hope, the sound of my heart, beat fast. I prepared my portfolio, and I went for the interview. The company was huge, one of the biggest names in the gaming industry. The sound of my nervousness, the sound of my heart beating fast, overwhelmed me. 4 zeros to Gauch. 02 30,000. I entered the waiting room, and the sound of the air conditioning, the sound of the low conversations of the other candidates, was a sound of uncertainty. Suddenly, a woman with a gentle smile called me. Yumi, the CEO is ready to see you. The sound of those words made me swallow hard. The CEO, Park. His name was known throughout the industry. He was a genius, but he also had a reputation for being cold, a perfectionist, and having OCD about organization. The sound of my stomach churned. 502 40,000. 03 10,000. I entered the room, and the sound of my heels echoed on the floor. The room was impeccable. The walls were white. The furniture was black. There wasn't a single object out of place. And in the center of the room, behind a glass table, was him. The sound of his presence, the sound of his gaze, made me feel small. He was handsome. His hair was dark. His eyes were piercing. He wore a black suit, and he looked at me from head to toe. The sound of his gaze was a sound of judgment. 6R003 $20,000. R003 50,000. Yumi, he said, and his voice was cold, sharp. You have the talent we're looking for, but I have some reservations about you. The sound of his words made me feel defeated. He picked up my portfolio. Your work is creative, but the colors, the chaos, the purple, he said, and the sound of the word purple in his mouth sounded like disgust. I don't like messes, Yumi. And your work, your life, everything seems to be a mess. The sound of his words hit me like a punch. 790-004 $1,000. 00104 at 30,000. I stood up and said, Mr. Park, my work is the opposite of chaos. My work is about emotion, about passion, about life. I use color to express what I feel, and the color purple is the color of magic, of creativity, of passion. The sound of my voice, full of emotion, caught him by surprise. The sound of his silence, the sound of his breathing was a sound of surprise. He looked me in the eyes. You are brave, Yumi, he said. But life isn't about emotion. Life is about logic. 8-0-04 40,000. 0005 10,000. Life is about organization. Life is about order. The sound of his voice was like a robot. I'll give you a chance, Yumi, but if you can't adapt, I'll fire you. The sound of his voice sent a chill down my spine. But the sound of hope, the sound of my heart, told me I could do it. The sound of my new routine was the sound of a black and white life. Waking up, dressing in black, going to work, working in a cold environment, and going home. Mr. Park's life was like a shoebox. 9-5 20,000. 5 50,000. Organized, functional, but lifeless. The sound of his shoes, the sound of his steps, was a sound of perfection. The sound of my life was a sound of a mess. The sound of my sneakers hitting the floor, the sound of my hair flying, the sound of my laughter. We were opposites. He, in his black suit, me in my colorful clothes. He, with his impeccable desk, me, with my desk covered in papers, pens, and coffee cups. 10-006 1000. 006 30,000. The sound of his voice, a sound of criticism. Yumi, your work is good, but the font, the color, your layout, it's too chaotic. The sound of my voice, a sound of defense. Mr. Park, it's my art. It's my expression. One day I was eating instant noodles in my apartment. The sound of my cell phone rang. It was Mr. Park. The sound of his voice was urgent. Yumi, I need you at work. Now. I, surprised, ran to work. When I arrived, the meeting room was full of people. 11-06 40,000. 07 10,000. The sound of the voices, the sound of nerves overwhelmed me. Mr. Park was there standing looking at me. We have a problem, Yumi, he said. Our main project, the Kingdom of Colors project, is in trouble. The main artist, Mr. Kim, got sick. And now, you are the only person who can help us. The sound of those words made me swallow hard. The Kingdom of Colors project was a game about a colorful world full of magic. The sound of my hope, the sound of my heart, told me I could do it. 12, 0, 7, 20,000, 7, 50,000. I can, Mr. Park, I said, but I need help. He looked me in the eyes. You will have help, he said. I'll help you. We'll work together. We'll save our project. The sound of his words caught me by surprise. Me and him, together? We were opposites. The sound of our forced coexistence? I didn't know if I could handle it. The sound of our work was the sound of a duel. The sound of Mr. Park's voice, a sound of criticism. Yumi, your color is too vibrant. It's too chaotic. 13 or 0, 08, wow 1,000. Waru, 08, 30,000. The sound of my voice, a sound of defense. Mr. Park, it's a game about a kingdom of colors. The chaos, the color, is the essence of the game. The sound of our discussion echoed through the room. He was a perfectionist. He was a robot. He was order, and I was chaos. But little by little, I began to see another side of him. One day, I had a headache. I sat at my desk, and the sound of my pain overwhelmed me. Mr. Park came toward me. Yumi, are you okay? He asked. 14 ard 8, 40,000. Ard 9, 10,000. The sound of his voice, a sound of concern, caught me by surprise. He gave me a pill. Take this, he said, and please go home. Rest. The sound of his words made me smile. Another day, I was working late. The sound of my stomach growled. I was hungry. Suddenly, Mr. Park approached with a box of food. I know you're hungry, he said. I bought this for you. It's for our project. He sat next to me and we ate in silence. 15 under 9, 20,000. RO 9, 50,000. The sound of our silence, a comfortable silence, was the sound of two strangers who were becoming friends. He told me about his childhood. He told me he was a chaotic boy, that his life was a mess, and that he, one day, decided to change. I wanted to be perfect, Yumi. I wanted to be order. I didn't want to be chaos anymore. The sound of his voice was sad. I understand, I said, but you don't have to be perfect. You can be who you are, and chaos. Chaos is the most beautiful part of life. 16 oridu 10 dorin 1,000. Waridi 10 30,000. The sound of my voice, full of emotion, caught him by surprise. He looked at me, and his gaze was a sound of admiration. You're the only person who has ever told me that, Yumi, he said. And the sound of his words, a sound of vulnerability, made me feel a connection with him. The sound of our hearts beating fast was the melody of a romance that was beginning. The sound of our love was the sound of colors mixing. 17, 010, 40,000. 011, $10,000. The sound of his black suit mixing with the sound of my colorful clothes. The sound of his laughter, a sound I had never heard before, was my favorite melody. He told me about his Kingdom of Colors project. He told me the game was about his desire to go back to being the chaotic boy he once was. The sound of his confession made me cry. I love you, Yumi, he said. I love you because you remind me of who I was. I love you because you are my chaos. You are my color. 18 Nendra 11, 20,000. Rajdra 11, 50,000. The sound of those words made me cry even more. I hugged him and my crying mixed with my laughter. I love you too, Mr. Park, I said. I love you too. The sound of our conversation was the sound of a romance that was flourishing. We were opposites, but we complemented each other. The sound of his voice, a sound of love, was proof that he wasn't a robot. He was a human being with a heart, and my heart, my chaotic heart, was in love with him. 19 Sir 12 per thousand, Sir 12 30,000. The sound of our happiness was a sound of danger. The sound of our love story was a secret. The sound of our romance was the sound of something forbidden. I was an employee, and he was the CEO. Society, the company, everyone would judge us. The sound of my fear, the sound of my anxiety, overwhelmed me. One day, the door to Mr. Park's office opened. It was Ms. Kang, a serious woman, the head of the HR department. She was a woman who had always looked at me with suspicion. Yumi, Mr. 20, 0, 12, 40,000. 0, 13, 10,000. Park needs you, she said, and her voice was cold. I stood up and walked toward the office. The sound of my steps was a sound of apprehension. When I entered, the door closed. We need to talk, Yumi, Ms. Kang said. Mr. Park and you, I know what's going on. The sound of her voice sent a chill down my spine. We're not doing anything wrong, I said, and my voice was weak. We're not. You are an employee, and he is the CEO, she said. You are a mess, and he is a man of order. 21, 0, 13, $20,000. 0, 13, $50,000. You don't complement each other. And if you continue with this, the company's reputation, Mr. Park's reputation, will be ruined. You have to choose, Yumi, your job or your love. The sound of her words hit me like a punch. I stood up. The sound of my heart beating fast was loud. I loved my job. I loved my dream of being an artist. But I loved Mr. Park. I couldn't live without him. I couldn't live without my chaos, my color. I can't give up on myself, I said. And I can't give up on my love. 22, 0, 14,000. 0, 14, 30,000. Mr. Park loves me for who I am. He loves me for being Yumi, for being the chaos that I am. I can't, and I won't, Give up on him, Ms. Kang looked at me, and the sound of her voice, a sound of disdain, told me she hated me. You will regret this, Yumi, she said. You will lose everything, everything. The sound of my tears, which I had been holding back for so long, finally flowed down my face. I ran to my apartment, and the sound of my sadness overwhelmed me. Mr. Park called me. 23 or 014, 40,000. 0015, 10,000. Yumi, are you okay? He asked, and his voice was full of concern. I'm okay, Mr. Park, I said, and my voice was trembling. I think Ms. Kang found out about us. The sound of his silence, a silence of shock, sent a chill down my spine. I'll handle this, Yumi, he said. I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to let you give up on me. I'll fight for you. The sound of his words, a sound of determination, gave me the strength I needed. The next day, I went to work. 24, 0, 15, $20,000. 0, 15, 50,000. The sound of the office was a sound of nervousness. I could feel the stares, the whispers. I sat at my desk, and Mr. Park came toward me. You're not alone, he said. I'm here. The sound of his words, a sound of support, made me smile. He took me to his office. Ms. Kang gave me an ultimatum, he said. She said I have to choose my company or my love. I didn't need a second to think. I chose you, Yumi. The sound of those words made me cry. 25 and 0, 16,000. 0, 16, 30,000. He hugged me, and my crying mixed with my laughter. I love you too, Mr. Park, I said. I love you too. The sound of our happiness was the sound of our hard work. The sound of our love was the sound of our creativity. We worked together on the Kingdom of Colors project. The sound of our voices, the sound of our ideas, mixed into a perfect melody. He with his vision of order, and I with my vision of chaos. We created a world of colors, of emotion, of life. 26, 16, 40,000. 017, 10,000. We created the world he always wanted, and the world I always dreamed of. One day, Ms. Kang came to our office. She looked at us, and the sound of her gaze, a sound of hatred, sent a chill down my spine. The board of directors is here, she said. They want to see the project, and they want to see you, Mr. Park. The sound of her voice was a sound of victory. She knew our project wasn't ready. She knew we would be fired. Mr. Park looked at me. Let's go, Yumi, he said. 27, or 0, 17, 20,000, 0, 17, and 50,000. We can do this. The sound of his voice was calm, confident. We entered the meeting room. The sound of the voices, the sound of nerves, was a sound of tension. Mr. Park began the presentation. He talked about the project, about our story, about our love. He talked about how chaos and order mix and how they create life. He showed our project, our world. The sound of the silence in the room was the answer. People were amazed. The sound of our story, the sound of our love, touched their hearts. 28, 18,000. 0, 18, 30,000. The sound of their applause, a sound of approval, made me cry. We won, I said. We won. The sound of my life now has a new melody. The sound of my apartment, which used to be a mess, is now a home. The sound of my work, which used to be a struggle, is now a passion. The sound of my heart, which used to be a sound of fear, is now a sound of love. Mr. Park and I are together. We got married. 29, 0 or 18 or 40,000. 0, 19 or 10,000. We got married in a small ceremony, surrounded by our friends and family. And the sound of our I do, the sound of our hearts beating in unison, was the sound of a new beginning. The sound of our love, of our promise, was the melody that reminds me that love, true love, the love I always wanted, is here. We are a couple of opposites. He in his black suit, me in my colorful clothes. He with his impeccable desk, me with my desk covered in papers, pens, and coffee cups. 30, 0, 19, 20,000. 0, 19, 50,000. But we complement each other. The sound of our laughter, the sound of our kisses, the sound of our hearts beating in unison is proof that love is the only thing that matters. Love is the only thing that can unite chaos and order, the only thing that can make the world a more beautiful place. The sound of my life now is a work of art. The sound of my work, the sound of my drawings, the sound of my love. Mr. Park and I are working together on a comic book. 31, 0, 20,000. 0, 20, 30,000. The sound of our voices, the sound of our ideas, mixes into a perfect melody. He, with his vision of order, and I, with my vision of chaos. We created a story about a world of colors, of emotion, of life. We created the story he always wanted, and the story I always dreamed of. We created the story of us. The story of a cold CEO with a dislike for messes and a chaotic designer who fell in love. The story of how chaos and order united and created love. 32, 0, 20, 40,000. 0, 21, 10,000. The story of how love is the only thing that matters. The sound of our story, the sound of our love, is the melody that reminds me that life, real life, our life, is the most beautiful story I have ever heard. The sound of my heart, which used to be a sound of fear, is now a sound of love. The sound of my life, which used to be a sound of chaos, is now a sound of happiness. 33 and 021 20,000, 021 50,000. The sound of my work, the sound of my drawings, the sound of my love, the sound of my life is the most beautiful melody in the world. The sound of our happiness is the sound of a new day, the sound of our coffee being served, the sound of our laughter, the sound of our kisses. Mr. Park tells me every day that he loves me. He tells me I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, and the sound of his voice when he says that is the most beautiful melody in the world. 34 0 22 6,000, 0 22 30,000. We are a couple of opposites. He in his black suit, me in my colorful clothes. He with his impeccable desk, me with my desk covered in papers, pens, and coffee cups. But we complement each other. The sound of our laughter, the sound of our kisses, the sound of our hearts beating in unison is proof that love is the only thing that matters. 35 0 22 40,000, 0 23 to 10,000. The sound of our life, the sound of our story, the sound of our love is the melody that reminds me that life, real life, our life, is the most beautiful story I have ever heard. And the sound of our love, of our promise, the sound of our hearts beating in unison is the melody that reminds me that love, true love, the love I've always wanted, is here, and it's here to stay.